Hello, I'm Bob McFadden, aka Et2Bruté of the band Et2Bruté and the Conspiracy. And on behalf of the Conspiracy and myself, we would like to welcome you to our brand new film, The Case for the Impeachment of President Donald J. Trump, the musical. As a lifelong student of history, I see two major differences between President Nixon, who resigned his presidency in 1974, and President Trump today. Number one, President Nixon did not have a major news cable station that could provide a platform for his presidential run and or for his defense during his impeachment proceedings. And number two, President Nixon was not compromised by and did not have the assistance of Russia and their billionaire oligarchs who were looking to launder hundreds of millions of dollars in our country at the same time that Donald J. Trump, self-proclaimed billionaire, businessman, genius, was being turned down by U.S. banks during the recession of 2008, which is probably the main reason that he refuses to release his tax returns. Despite these two major differences, there are enough similarities between the two Republican presidents for me to apply my 2003 written lyrics to this, our first of two music videos for the film, titled Feeling Like Richard Nixon. I hope you like it.
Watch it.
Let me just say this. I want to say this to the television. I made my mistakes.
Feeling like Richard Nixon. Feeling like Richard Nixon. Feeling like Richard Nixon in 1974. 1974. Feeling like Richard Nixon. Feeling like Richard Nixon. Feeling like Richard Nixon in 1974. Walking out through the door. Feel like I just resigned. Going out of my mind.
In all of my years in public life, I have never profited public service. I have earned every cent. In all of my years in public life, I have never obstructed justice.
I've been cheating and I've been lying. I've been stealing, keep on denying. Since 1974. 1974. I give people a brief assassination. To give my lectures, I put their reputation. 1974.
1974. I earn between $100,000 and $250,000 every year. So that's where the money came from.
Feeling like Richard Nixon. Feeling like Richard Nixon. Feeling like Richard Nixon.
People have got to know whether or not they're president.
I am not a crook.
I'm not a crook. cards face up.
Feeling like rich and rich. 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 Feeling like rich and rich.
Just think how much you're going to be missed. You don't have Nixon to kick around anymore. You don't have Nixon to kick around.
Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff has a comment on that last song that I'd like you to see.
But the other defense, besides it failed, the scheme failed, they got caught, the other defense is the president denies it. Well, I guess that's case closed, right? The president says, really quite spontaneously, it's not as if he was asked in this way, no quid pro quo. What do you want from Ukraine? No quid pro quo. This is the I'm not a crook defense. You say it, and I guess that's the end of it. Well, the only thing we can say is that it's not so much that this situation is different in terms of Nixon's conduct and Trump's conduct. What we've seen here is far more serious than a third-rate burglary of the Democratic headquarters. What we're talking about here is the withholding of recognition in that White House meeting, the withholding of military aid to an ally at war. That is beyond anything Nixon did. The difference between then and now is not the difference between Nixon and Trump. It's the difference between that Congress and this one. And so we are asking, where is Howard Baker? Where is Howard Baker?
With his poll numbers hovering around 40%, 45% for his entire presidency, in order for President Trump to be reelected in 2020, he realized that he was going to need to implement a similar plan to the one that he executed in 2016. And that was with the help of his favorite major news cable station and with the help of Russia, or this time, by extension, Ukraine. The plan was he would smear his political rival until his rival's disapproval numbers rose to the numbers that he has at all times. And it worked in 2016, and he figured it was going to work in 2020. Now, for those who believe that it was not Russia, but it was Ukraine that interfered in our 2016 election, let me introduce you to Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for European and Russian Affairs on President Trump's National Security Council staff, Dr. Fiona Hill.
Based on questions and statements I've heard, some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves. The unfortunate truth is that Russia was the foreign power that systematically attacked our democratic institutions in 2016, This is the public conclusion of our intelligence agencies, confirmed in bipartisan congressional reports. It is beyond dispute, even if some of the underlying details must remain classified.
In the effort to pull off his corrupt, immoral, and illegal crimes, that is, bribing and extorting President Zelensky, Trump dispatched his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and the so-called Three Amigos, Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, Energy Secretary Rick Perry, and then envoy to Ukraine for its peace negotiations, Kurt Volker. He's going to dispatch Giuliani and these Three Amigos to Ukraine in order to smear and remove our ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, who was a nonpartisan, passionate, and extremely competent corruption fighter. They were also going to inform newly elected Ukrainian President Zelensky that the only way he would receive a White House call, a White House meeting, and the desperately needed military assistance that had already been approved by Congress and was now being held up by Trump, was if he agreed to announce an investigation into the debunked Putin fabrication that Ukraine, not Russia, had interfered in our 2016 presidential election, and President Zelensky would have to announce on CNN that he would be launching an investigation into President Trump's likely 2020 presidential rival, Joe Biden. In order to convince President Zelensky to do Trump's bidding, our president abused his power of the presidency in the forms of quid pro quo, bribery, and extortion, the last two of which are crimes that I have always associated with the mob. As a result, I wrote the lyrics to our next song, We've Got a Mob Boss in the White House. But before we get to our brand new song, I would like to introduce you to one of the Three Amigos, Ambassador Sondland. Now, he's not a never-Trumper, far from it. He received his position as ambassador to European Union as a result of a $1 million donation he made to the Trump inauguration back in 2017. So much for draining the swamp. You will hear his voice and part of his testimony during the song. I strongly recommend you go to YouTube and watch his entire opening statement. It is very revealing. And now, our brand new song, We've Got a Mob Boss in the White House. Are you talking to me?
Was there a quid pro quo?
If you're
The answer
asking
is
me,
yes.
was there a quid pro quo? The answer is yes.
We've got a mob boss in the White House. Don Corleone's got nothing on him. We've got a mob boss in the White House. Truth and justice are chances are slim. We've got a mob boss in the White House. His enemies, they all disappear. We've got a mob boss in the White House. The truth is only a fear. Let's go, guys. When the mob boss, when he lies, puts plans in disguise. When the mob boss, when he tries to deny, then it's plain to see. Not Fox viewers and me. Our country from sea to sea. Won't be great till we're mob boss free.
Quid pro
a marbles in the White House. He cares about only himself. We've got a marbles in the White House. And the crimes that add to his well. We got a marbles in the White House. The facts, they are crystal clear. We got a marbles in the White House. The truth is only clear.
Quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. Pro quo. Everyone was in the loop. Quid pro quo.
If not for the 2018 congressional elections, which flipped the House, and if not for the whistleblower, who was simply reacting to a number of concerned, patriotic, lifelong diplomats, ambassadors, and civil servants, Trump and Giuliani would have been able to drag out timely, periodic, new investigation facts from Ukraine that they would have made up as they needed them. Throughout the 2020 election, exactly how repeat the same successful strategy that worked with the help of WikiLeaks and Russia in 2016. The first of 4 important dates to remember in this part of the impeachment offenses and/or crimes, July 10th of this year. This was the date of the meeting between U.S. Representatives John Bolton, the three amigos, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, and Dr. Fiona Hill, who reported to Bolton. They all met with the Ukrainian representatives. When Sondland brought up Trump's investigation demands at the meeting, Bolton abruptly ended it. And then he told Hill to listen in on the follow-up meeting and get back to him. Hill heard Sondland say to the Ukrainians that in order to receive the White House meeting and the $391 million of military assistance, they would have to announce the investigations that would benefit Trump's re-election campaign. Here is Dr. Hill's testimony about what she overheard at that second meeting.
Now, did you have a conversation with Ambassador Bolton after this subsequent meeting with Ambassador Sondland?
I had a discussion with Ambassador Bolton both after the meeting in his office, a very brief one, and then one immediately afterwards, the subsequent meeting.
So the subsequent meeting, or after both meetings, when you spoke to him and relayed to him what Ambassador Sondland said, what did Ambassador Bolton say to you?
Well, I just want to highlight, first of all, that Ambassador Bolton wanted me to hold back in the room immediately after the meeting. Again, I was sitting on the sofa with a colleague.
Right, but just in that second meeting, what did he say?
Yes, but he was making a very strong point that he wanted to know exactly what was being said. And when I came back and related it to him, he had some very specific instruction for me. And I'm presuming that that's
what was that specific instruction?
So the specific instruction was that I had to go to the lawyers, to John Eisenberg, our senior counsel for the National Security Council, to basically say, you tell Eisenberg, Ambassador Bolton told me, that I am not part of this whatever drug deal that Mulvaney and Sondland are cooking up.
What did you understand him to mean by the drug deal that Mulvaney and Sondland were cooking up?
I took it to mean investigations for a meeting.
Did you go speak to the lawyers?
I certainly did.
You relayed everything that you just told us and
I relayed
more?
it precisely, and then the details of how the meeting had unfolded as well, which I gave a full description of this in my October 14 deposition.
The last 3 of the 4 dates to remember are all in a row. July 24th, 25th, and 26th. July 24th is the date that Robert Mueller testified before Congress about his findings during his investigation, where he found disturbing evidence of Russian collaboration and obstruction of justice. July 25th is the date of Trump's call to President Zelensky, which he said to the newly elected president that he wants a favor, though, which is the investigations, or at least announcements of the investigations into the 2016 elections and the Bidens. And finally, July 26th is the date that Ambassador Sondland was overheard by State Department official and counselor for political affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, David Holmes. When Sondland gave Trump the good news that Zelensky loved his ass and would do whatever he wanted him to do. Here's a bit of Holmes' testimony about that overheard call.
When the meeting ended, the 2 staffers and I accompanied Ambassador Sondland out of the presidential administration building. Ambassador Sondland said that he wanted to go to lunch, and I told Ambassador Sondland that I'd be happy to join him and the 2 staffers for lunch if he wanted to brief me out on his meeting with Mr. Yermak or discuss other issues. And Ambassador Sondland said that I should join. The 4 of us went to a nearby restaurant and sat on an outdoor terrace. I sat directly across from Ambassador Sondland, and the 2 staffers sat off to our sides. At first, the lunch was largely social. Ambassador Sondland selected a bottle of wine that he shared among the 4 of us, and we discussed topics such as marketing strategies for his hotel business. During the lunch, Ambassador Sondland said that he was going to call President Trump to give him an update. Ambassador Sondland placed a call on his mobile phone, and I heard him announce himself several times along the lines of Gordon Sondland holding for the president. It appeared that he was being transferred through several layers of switchboards and assistants, and I then noticed Ambassador Sondland's demeanor changed and understood that he had been connected to President Trump. While Ambassador Sondland's phone was not on speakerphone, I could hear the president's voice through the earpiece of the phone. The president's voice was loud and recognizable, and Ambassador Sondland held the phone away from his ear for a period of time, presumably because of the loud volume. I heard Ambassador Sondland greet the president and explain he was calling from Kyiv. I heard President Trump then clarify that Ambassador Sondland was in Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland replied, yes, he was in Ukraine, and went on to state that President Zelensky, quote, loves your ass. I then heard President Trump ask, so he's going to do the investigation. Ambassador Sondland replied that he's going to do it, adding that President Zelensky will do anything you ask him to do. After the call ended, Ambassador Sondland remarked that the president was in a bad mood. As Ambassador Sondland stated, it was often the case early in the morning. I then took the opportunity to ask Ambassador Sondland for his candid impression of the president's views on Ukraine. In particular, I asked Ambassador Sondland if it was true that the president did not give an expletive about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland agreed that the president did not give an expletive about Ukraine. I asked why not, and Ambassador Sondland stated that the president only cares about big stuff. I noted there was big stuff going on in Ukraine, like a war with Russia. And Ambassador Sondland replied that he meant big stuff that benefits the president, like the Biden investigation that Mr. Giuliani was pushing. The conversation then moved on to other topics.
Of all the congressional hearing testimonies and summations, I believe Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff summed it up best when he said the following.
My colleagues may think it's okay that the Russians offered dirt on a Democratic candidate for president as part of what was described as the Russian government's effort to help the Trump campaign. You might think that's okay. My colleagues might think it's okay that when that was offered to the son of the president, who had a pivotal role in the campaign, that the president's son did not call the FBI. He did not adamantly refuse that foreign help. No, instead, that son said that he would love the help of the Russians.
I don't think it's okay.
You might think it's okay that he took that meeting. You might think it's okay that Paul Manafort, the campaign chair, someone with great experience in running campaigns, also took that meeting. You might think it's okay that the president's son-in-law also took that meeting. You might think it's okay that they concealed it from the public. You might think it's okay that their only disappointment after that meeting was that the dirt they received on Hillary Clinton wasn't better. You might think that's okay. You might think it's okay that when it was discovered a year later that they lied about that meeting and said it was about adoptions. You might think it's okay that the president is reported to have helped dictate that lie. You might think that's okay. I don't. You might think it's okay that the campaign chairman of a presidential campaign would offer information about that campaign to a Russian oligarch in exchange for money or debt forgiveness. You might think that's okay. I don't. You might think it's okay that campaign chairman offered polling data, campaign polling data to someone linked to Russian intelligence. I don't think that's okay. You might think it's okay that the president himself called on Russia to hack his opponent's emails if they were listening. You might think it's okay that later that day, in fact, the Russians attempted to hack a server affiliated with that campaign. I don't think that's okay. You might think that it's okay that the president's son-in-law sought to establish a secret back channel of communications with the Russians through a Russian diplomatic facility. I don't think that's okay. You might think it's okay that an associate of the president made direct contact with the GRU through Guccifer II and WikiLeaks and is considered a hostile intelligence agency. You might think that it's okay a senior campaign official was instructed to reach that associate and find out what that hostile intelligence agency had to say in terms of dirt on his opponent. You might think it's okay that the National Security Advisor designate secretly conferred with a Russian ambassador about undermining U.S. sanctions, and you might think it's okay he lied about it to the FBI. You might say that's all okay. You might say that's just what you need to do to win. But I don't think it's okay. I think it's immoral. I think it's unethical. I think it's unpatriotic. And yes, I think it's corrupt and evidence of collusion. But I do not think that conduct, criminal or not, is okay. And the day we do think that's okay is the day we will look back and say that is the day America lost its way.
As stipulated in our Constitution, no one, including the President, is above the law. Finding President Trump not guilty is not an option. Our democracy depends on 3 equal branches of government. And in order to maintain that constitutional stipulation, President Trump, who has told the American people more than 13,000 lies over the past 3 years, and who has committed the crimes of abuse of the power of the presidency, bribery, extortion, quid pro quo, and numerous emolument violations, obstruction of justice, obstruction of Congress, and collusion and conspiracy with Russia, which to me constitutes treason. He must be found guilty in the impeachment process, and he must be removed from office. With your help, I believe, for the good of the country and for the good of democracies all over the world, that will happen. However, if the Republicans conduct a sham of a trial in the Senate, as expected, we should vote them all out in November of 2020. Thank you, and good night.
If we do night is day and day is night, if we do white is black and black is white, if we do right is wrong and wrong is right.